No, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. It's nice to be here. It's a few years since I was here, and Addis is constantly changing for the better. So this is a very important meeting for us as an international partner to Ethiopia, but also to the rest of the continent. The first summit, which happened 2 years ago in Nairobi, was really the first time at an international level that all the countries of the continent came together and said, look at us as an investment opportunity as we grow green and as we build our resilience. Don't think of us as a partner that just needs help. We need investment. We need rules that will support Africa, from rescheduling debt to trade rules which support green enterprise. We need more investment in our ability to be resilient to the climate impacts that we face, and there should be a different kind of partnership. This resonates very much with the current British government, and so to come here to the second summit is really about how do we mobilise the finance and help African countries access that finance, but also help explain to international investors that there is huge opportunity here in Africa as it develops. So for us, this is partly solidarity, partly working together on how to manage climate impacts, and partly investment preparation and an investment conference. Well, so I think what the summit has done very well is focus on priorities. So obviously clean energy infrastructure, which is a big story in Ethiopia, is important. So this means that countries need to have the regulations in place that would allow the infrastructure to develop and to be invested in, that will help carry green electrons, so clean energy, around the country. This is also a place where we need to invest in distributed renewable energy, so off-grid energy for far remote populations, because it's cheaper to get energy there that way than it is perhaps to extend the grid. And also we have the issue of clean cooking. So we have still millions of African women in particular cooking in a way which is dangerous to the health of their children and to themselves, which deforests the landscape. And this is an investable proposition as well, because technology has advanced and markets have advanced. So so priority one is helping with the regulations that support that. Second then is finding the investments into the investment projects. And then thirdly is attracting private investment. So we have a number of different ways in which we invest. We use our own public concessional finance, aid money, to help countries build the capacity and change their rules and regulations. I mean, here we have been working very hard to support the stock exchange. This is essential for businesses, domestic businesses and international businesses, to really thrive. And then we have different investment funds where we are invested, and we use our funds to attract private investment alongside us. And they are all here looking for investment opportunities. And then we're a very big shareholder in the international funds for development, the Africa Development Bank, the World Bank, etc. And so as a shareholder, we want those institutions to lean in and do more as well. So that's just energy, but I could repeat the story for a number of different areas. But again, you can't grow an economy if you don't have access to reliable, affordable and clean energy. So I think, first of all, the atmosphere has been extremely positive and all solution focused. But I've sat in a number of meetings around growing carbon markets, so helping African countries benefit from the nature and their ability to sequester carbon. So I think the possibility of growing carbon markets is very important and large scale. I've sat in all kinds of meetings around bringing new finance to help with creating clean cooking in schools so that children get fed, emissions come down, and we can help education systems do better. I've sat in meetings about really large scale infrastructure projects and how to sequence the assistance and then the investment. And I've also sat in meetings where how to make cities resilient, how to combat extreme heat. All of these are then accompanied by different organisations and different funds thinking about how to make these investable propositions. So across the whole panoply of what it's going to take to grow green and what it's going to take to be resilient to climate change, those sessions have been going on, and it's all about how to stimulate investment. So I think it's been a constructive conference. So historically, we industrialized and developed early, and we are therefore one of the countries that is responsible for a lot of the emissions that are now causing so many impacts. And so the most important responsibility we have is to manage our own emissions. Now, we have an extremely ambitious timeline and commitment to becoming a net zero, so to putting our economy in balance with the planet. And that means that we are, first of all, driving our energy system to be energy neutral, so carbon neutral. So by 2030, we will have a clean electricity system, and we will have a clean energy system not long thereafter. That means that we have moved in the last 20 years from coal to gas to renewables. Our energy mix will have some gas, some nuclear energy, but is mainly a renewable energy system. So the first thing we have to do is live up to our responsibility to zero out our emissions. The second responsibility we have is to help other countries around the world manage their transitions. And so that's a very big part of my job as the envoy, is to travel around the world, working out what do countries really need at their stage of transition, and what of our experience can we share with other countries, as well as then how can we invest and how can we stimulate private investment that is listed in London at our stock exchange, or that is domiciled in London, so the banks and the insurers and everything. How can we get them to invest more in African countries, for example? So first responsibility, clean up our own economy. Second responsibility, help others do the same. So I think we should think about becoming resilient to these climate impacts in three ways. How do we help individuals and families become resilient? And that means being able to warn people that extreme weather events are coming. It means being able to make sure that they've got the cash or the support to be able to access food and energy, even in the throes of either a drought or a flood or other impacts. We have to think about how to make nature conserve nature and protect it, because it's our greatest form of resilience. So if we destroy the forests of Africa, then we destroy the ability to grow crops in Africa. That undermines African prosperity, but it also undermines our prosperity, because our food supply depends a lot on imports from Africa. So these are win-win scenarios, right? And the third is how to make our infrastructure resilient to climate change. So given the changes in the weather, from heat to floods to extreme events, when you build a road, when you build a dam, when you build a factory, when you build a school, a health clinic, these have to be built to be able to be resilient to the climate change that's coming. So in all of those areas, we can support countries with the best experience from other countries in the world, but we can also support with investment into, seeds that are resilient to extreme heat, to new building materials which help keep a city cooler. But the other thing I want to say about resilience is that a lot of the best examples are already on the African continent, right? There are city leaders around the continent that have done more to make their cities cooler, whether it is painting the roofs, whether it's making their cities greener, things that can drop the temperature by many, many degrees. In fact, with very little resources, African city leaders around the continent are leading on this. So it's not a question that all of the answers are in the developed world, and sometimes the best answers are here. It's true that development assistance in many developed countries is shrinking under pressure from the global geopolitics of the world. Climate finance is actually increasing, but not fast enough. But the really big problem is that the climate finance is not flowing to the communities in African countries. So there is climate finance, but it's not coming here enough. So the question is, how do we find new ways to generate finance that will flow? And that's why I think carbon markets are really important. It's why I think there's a new generation of levies that we will put on the highest polluters. So for example, we're discussing putting a levy on the bunker fuels, the really dirty fuels that much of the world's shipping uses, and that would then eventually lead back to more resources coming into developing countries, and then it's stimulating more private investment as well. And then also using the savings which are already in the continent to invest in the continent's own infrastructure. So I think we're in a transition between an old way of thinking about this and a new way of thinking about this, because climate impacts have come early and they've come to everybody and they're becoming more severe. So we have to find new ways to stimulate finance. So in general, we're very much focused on energy, clean energy infrastructure. We're also focused on protecting forests and finding ways to stimulate financial flows into forests while they're standing. At the moment, in much of the world, a forest is valued once it's been cut down, and that we have to reverse that trend. So all kinds of financial innovation and funds for forest conservation and protection. I think a lot of work on sustainable agriculture and how do we maintain agricultural yields and grow them when the weather is when the climate is changing as much as it is. Finally, I think things like clean cooking, where we're working around East Africa and the whole East Africa community, but also in Ethiopia. And I think we're also interested in building out the business models for distributed renewable energy. And of course, Ethiopia is an extraordinary country and it has enormous renewable energy wealth. But we are a partner to Ethiopia to make sure that communities across the whole country get access to energy as well. And so Ethiopia is not only an answer to the energy issues that the whole region experiences, but is also able to distribute that energy effectively to all of its people. Well, I think that in a fast-growing city like Addis, you have to build for the future, right? So the planning so that it is a green city, so that the air quality is clear. Obviously that comes from transport and from energy. So all of these things are in the mix, but this will become essential. You have to build resilience into your energy system. Sometimes that resilience comes from being connected to the grid, but also having underneath the grid mini grids and microgrids. Ethiopia is dependent upon exports for finance as well and for growth, and so traditional exports from coffee to sesame, these are potentially impacted by climate change. We've seen other countries' coffee crops completely collapse. That's actually been good for Ethiopia in the short run, but we need to make sure that we understand the dynamics and maintain the importance of those yields. And then you've got the question of climate change really driving people off the land, or drought cycles which become unsustainable. And then we see social tensions within communities, and we also see the origins of conflict as well. And so helping Ethiopians manage their way through a green growth transition, but also managing their way through resilience is important not only to Ethiopians, but important to the wider region, important to the world. Let's talk about electric vehicles, because two-wheelers, small cars, trucks. So the obvious benefit of that is that you don't have to depend on expensive energy imports. You don't have to import fossil fuels for your automotive fleet. But at the same time, government receives revenue from taxes on petroleum in your car, right? So on the one hand, it's very good to see the number of EVs growing. At the second hand, that's a reduction in tax receipts to the government. So one of the things that we can do is work with the government to provide advice on how you manage that transition, because we're going through that transition as well. And so it's very much a dialogue between two countries going through transitions. You know, obviously different countries in many ways, but the dynamics of those transitions are the same. So obviously, and then in a city setting, if all of your vehicles are clean, then that makes a tremendous difference to air quality. That makes a difference to the health of children, the health of everybody on the streets. And we know from London, where we imposed strict conditions on which kinds of cars can drive around the city, that we've immediately improved the health outcomes of children, their mental health as well as their physical health, and it's a more pleasant city to live in. It has promoted clean air, which it attracts tourism because it's a nice city to visit. So there are all kinds of ancillary benefits to a decision to clean up transportation. And so these are questions where city leaders can talk to each other, but also countries can talk to each other.